On this edition of Independent Sources, video Eyewitness. Can the push to get police officers to wear body cameras curb what some call unnecessary police brutality?
I think it's good they're making some trials, but I would rather have the citizens themselves do the filming before I would entrust the police with, safeguarding the public interest in that way.
And web designer, a Brooklyn resident, uses the internet to make waves in the fashion industry.
We have to think about the future of fashion. With social media, we see everything very fast, even more so than like style.com.
Those stories and more coming up on Independent Sources. Welcome to Independent Sources, bringing you news from New York's ethnic and immigrant communities. I'm Sarah Pizon. When video of a police officer using an alleged chokehold to take down Eric Garner arose, many thought that it was a slam dunk case for the Staten Island District Attorney to get an indictment. That was not the case. The DA's failure inflamed many in the city who say that the video clearly showed the officer in the wrong. Hundreds are still protesting the decision and calling for more police oversight. Mayor Bill de Blasio has responded to those calls, recently announcing that some of the city's police officers will begin wearing body cameras. Even President Obama has weighed in on the issue, saying that he will ask for $75 million in federal funds to distribute 50,000 body cameras to police departments nationwide. So can body cameras and cameras wielded by concerned citizens really curb police violence? Gary Pierre spoke with Jason Del Aguila of the police watchdog group El Grito de Sunset Park and Yvette Alberding-Time, the executive director of the human rights organization Witness, about whether or not cameras can be trusted to ensure that truth and justice always prevail.
Yvette, there's been a lot of controversy about the use of cameras on police bodies patrolling the streets. What do you come down on that? Would that be useful? Would that be helpful?
Well, I run an organization called Witness, and for over 2 decades we've supported people to use video to expose the truth. And so overarchingly, I would rather have citizens do it than have the police do it. There have been some really good trials with police wearing cameras where the instances in Rialto in California, for example, where the instances of force or extreme force went down and the complaints went down. But I think there's still a lot of issues with it. There's a privacy issue. What happens to those videos when they actually end up in the database of the police? I don't know, given sort of the state we're in right now, whether I would trust the police to actually not lose a video or edit it in a way that's very favorable to them. So overarchingly, I think it's good they're making some trials, but I would rather have the citizens themselves do the filming before I would entrust the police with, safeguarding the public interest in that way.
Jason, good point, Yvette. Jason, your organization deals directly with cops. I mean, that's what you guys do. You watch them in many ways. Do you trust the police to monitor themselves in this way?
Well, in the cases that we've had at El Grito de Sunset Park, where we've subpoenaed, where lawyers have subpoenaed the NYPD for the videos that are already being recorded on our street corners, and also by the officers' TARU unit.
What's that? What unit is that?
The TARU is a small unit with cameras, so those cameras and the cameras that are on our street corners, we've filed FOIL requests,
Freedom of Information
law requests, and we've had lawyers subpoena for these videos, and those videos have not been granted to people that are fighting cases that could exonerate them, which is against their rights.
So you're saying even when videos already exist, the police are not cooperating and releasing those videos?
Correct.
And is this a false issue, really, trying to circumvent the real issue of police brutality? Because it seems like people think if you have a video, then, everything will be solved. Is it yet, again, another one of those wishful thinking scenarios, Yvette?
No, I really don't think it's a false issue in your words. I do think video is an extremely powerful tool. I think the issue of police brutality in the US is a deeply ingrained wrong that takes a systemic overhaul that cannot be solved just by video, but we've seen many instances where video actually can really catalyze the road to justice. If you think about it, as much as the grand jury in the Eric Garner case obviously committed a horrible wrong by not indicting after they saw the visible truth of what actually happened in that case. But we would not even have known his name but for the fact that a citizen actually filmed it.
He was arrested too, wasn't he?
Yeah,
the person?
yeah. That is actually the most paradoxical thing, that the man who filmed this himself was indicted by the same, or by a Staten Island grand jury, which is just this crazy twist of fate. That actually does speak to the fact that the people who are filming very frequently are exposed to risk, and so that we all have a legal right to observe what the police is doing, and the act of doing it obviously gets frequently, even in that video, you could see the police interfering with the fact that he was doing it.
Good point, because a lot of these people end up being arrested. One journalism student from the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism was arrested. A whole bunch of people were arrested taking pictures. So how do you talk to your members, and what do you tell them when they're filming a scene in which abuse is occurring?
Well, I mean, you got to realize that, yeah, you are going to be in the front line of where there's going to be a lot of high tension going on. And as much as it's I feel like a citizen responsibility to be able to document their experiences with authority, it's also a responsibility to understand the risk that you're putting yourself in and the people with you in. As in the case of Eric Garner, how you just mentioned, when he was asked to stop recording, when the gentleman who was recording was asked to stop recording, the officer proceeded with going up to him and going for his camera, and probably more than that we can't see on camera. So for that, we tell people we have to watch each other's backs. This is a very dangerous thing. You can't glamorize this thing as some kind of, this is my adventure, or this is the badge I'm putting on myself because, you know, I'm with the revolution or whatever. That takes a certain level of discipline to be able to keep yourself in check, as well as the dangers that can accumulate in check. So people need to know their rights, but they also need to know what safety they have and don't have under the powers that be. So having a crew with you that can watch each other's backs, that can make sure that you're not the only one with the camera, that you're not going to be targeted by police alone. Mm-hmm. And if somehow that you are, that we have the video that we've recorded how and why you were targeted. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the why is very much just for that cop watching his own back. He wants to make sure that no one has the video of him doing something wrong, of him doing something that isn't part of the regular police conduct or allowed police conduct.
Yvette, what do you tell your members?
Well, we actually, I completely agree with that. We have, in the years we've worked with people who are filming, we have learned a lot about what it takes, because very frequently people do document bad police conduct, but don't do it in a way that actually makes a difference. So if you really want to make sure your video does make a difference, there are some very simple guides and tips, such as ensuring that you film a cop's badge. And then, so we've created
you have a list,
a tip sheet.
Tip sheet, yeah.
And that's based on work in many different countries. It's sort of the best practices. That's available for free on our website, so you can download it at witness.org. And I think it gives you the best practices, so that when that video then ends up in court, that it actually is done in a way that it actually will make a difference.
You guys do something, you go beyond that of trying to authenticate videos.
Yes.
Talk to us about that. How do you do that?
I think one of the biggest challenges right now, I mean, first of all, there's an incredible opportunity, because we have, as we like to say, the little brothers and sisters who can actually make sure that the police behaves themselves, and that can document the abuses in their communities and really use video for change. And but the flip side of that is that it's also really important that you can trust those videos. So we've worked very extensively to make sure that when a citizen shoots a video, that you can authenticate it. So we've published a handbook on authentication, but we also work with technology that actually takes the data in your phone and then meshes it with your video so that you can prove your story and you can make sure that it was where it was and when it was. And lastly, we've also published a guide that's called Activist Guides to the Activist Guide to Archiving Mobile Videos. It should have a shorter, easier name. But that's because if justice takes a longer time and you are running around with mobile videos on your phone, how do you make sure you preserve that evidence for later? So all of that actually is to ensure that the amazing potential that citizen media has, they're usually the bystanders, the first-hand witnesses, that it actually helps in securing justice.
Jason, where do you see this going?
Even in Sunset Park alone, when we go out and cop watch, people recognize us and people tell us sometimes, hey, you guys, we heard about this thing that happened the other day, this kid. So as often as we go out there and try and record police doing their work, there's a lot of times we don't get to be there when it happens, that we hear about it later. We look for a video, we try and get the case, we try and research it. So there's a lot that doesn't make it to be a case, to even be a case in the media or to even be a case in court, because there's police intimidation that might scare a person into making it a full court case, and so they sign an ACD and it's over, it's lost in history. So I feel like what can happen and what I hope happens is more people are aware of their rights as citizens and start exercising these rights with as simple as recording it. And even if it doesn't make it to court, even if we continue seeing the injustice we have been seeing, where we have the proof and no one gets indicted, then it goes down in the records of history. History will absolve these cases. The idea that our word will not be, what is it? There's a phrase that says history will be written by those who want it, and right. So if we can have power back into how history is written with as simple as recording this, then yeah, we should definitely exercise that and encourage others to do so.
Well, we have to leave it there, unfortunately. This is a subject that's ongoing, and then we'll be revisiting it from time to time. Jason, Yvette, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Still to come on the show, multimedia art inspired by an anarchist. Before that, Crystal Lowe has some other news.
Thanks, Sarah. Here's a look at some headlines from New York's ethnic and community media. New York City's homeless shelter system is coming under fire for the alleged abuse of its residents at the hands of their security staff. Residents of the shelter system have filed grievances accusing the shelter staff members of abuse and harassment. City Limits reports that these allegations are being overlooked and ignored by the Department of Homeless Services. The publication says that hard data on these grievances is difficult to come by. In addition, victims of the alleged abuse refuse to report the incidents for fear of retaliation from the officers they've accused. As of November 20th, 2014, 58,500 people reside in New York City's homeless shelter system. The Brooklyn Inc. reports on the growing dissension within the New York City Police Department in response to the lack of representation of Hispanics in higher positions within the NYPD. According to NYPD statistics, Hispanics made up 38% of misdemeanor arrests in 2013, while 35% were blacks and 21.8% of those arrested were whites. Although Hispanic officers comprise 26.5% of the police force, only 10% are captains, compared with 80% that are white. Anthony Miranda, the chairman of the National Latino Officers Association and a retired cop, believes that having Hispanic representation at the top levels of policymaking will make a difference across the city. Traditional car service companies are facing some serious competition from the Uber ride-sharing service. Good Luck Car Service, the largest dispatching car service company in the city, spoke with Voices of New York about how Uber's app that allows passengers to order taxis with convenience straight from their smartphones has caused the business to think of new ways to get their customers back. Bing Yi, the president of Good Luck Car Service, says that Uber is posing a great threat to his business by taking many of his customers and some of his drivers. Yi explains that corporate clients make up 20% of his business, and in response to the global financial crisis of 2008, corporations slashed their transportation budgets. He now stands to lose the remaining 80% of his clients to companies like Uber. Yi plans on introducing an app of his own in the coming months in order to remain competitive. The Department of Education recently approved a partial Regents waiver for institutions designed for English learners. The waiver is available to people who've been in the country for 4 years or less and had a low score on English language exams at the time they applied for high school. Riverdale Press reports that the new waiver requires that students pass the Math and English Regents examinations and allows students to participate in a portfolio and capstone project that focuses on other subjects such as history and science. Jeremy Heyman, a college counselor at Ellis, an English language learners and international support preparatory program, believes the new program will increase fairness and validity of assessing students, particularly those who are still learning English and come from low-income households. And finally, the Korean Daily reports on the increasing cases of domestic violence in that community. Over a span of 6 months, over 70% of the counseling provided by the Korean American Family Center was given in relation to domestic violence incidents. The culture of domestic abuse and the reluctance to report it has caused the community's divorce rate to soar. Bo Ram Sung, a mental health counselor, says Koreans tend to be highly reluctant to reveal their private family lives to others, putting more importance on hiding their weaknesses than getting help, which in turn increases the damage. Those were just a few headlines from the city's ethnic and community media. Independent Sources will be right back.
Thanks for staying tuned. Disposable Heroes is the latest work of the 3D artist Trina McLaughlin. The multimedia exhibit is inspired by the American anarchist and peace activist Emma Goldman. Abi Ishola spoke to McLaughlin about Goldman's influence on her work and why she chose apes as her subjects.
Welcome, Tricia.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you. So you were inspired by Emma Goldman's speech, Patriotism, a Menace to Liberty, to create Disposable Heroes.
Right.
How so?
I started, actually, I think it was 2009, someone contacted me from the History Channel and Annie Boom. It was a competition where they had actors doing different historical speeches or songs. And so I did 30 seconds of that. That didn't pan out, but that's where I was first exposed to the speech. And so I kept it, and then I went back to it 2 years later. And it was a little different from what I'd done in the past. I worked a lot with fantasy architecture, and structure and how people live. And the idea of this kind of war games was a structure, so it was a social, cultural structure, not a physical one. And so that's how I got into, like I said, I was doing it more with architecture and spaces. And the idea of her speech using patriotism as propaganda to do the dirty work, I just kind of set it up as a structure of teams, like a war. And so there's the gold team and the silver team, the gold master, silver master, and then they send out their soldiers to do their work.
Well, that's interesting. And Disposable Heroes has been described as a multimedia world of ruling and warring apes. Why apes?
I know everyone asked that question. I had done another animation before that with apes on stone biker apes called History of the World. And I used them, I had them, but also there were characters. I had used 3D people before, Hefty Man and Slender Women, to stand in for every man, every woman. And these were like genderless. I could put any color on them. They would just serve as a surrogate, as a character that would represent human behavior, although animal behavior as well.
Can you explain your characters to us a bit?
The characters, the soldiers?
Yes.
Well, in this show, because I do use them interchangeably, and in this show I had different people recite parts of Emma Goldman's speech in different languages.
Oh, wow.
So the same ape character will speak in different languages.
Patriotism, sir, is the last resort of scoundrels.
So they'll be saying part of the speech in a woman's voice in French, and then the next part will be a male's voice in Arabic. And they're talking at the same time with each other, and then there's a chorus where they all say certain lines from the speech. But the idea of that is that they're, again, everyone, because they can be from any country in the same body. And it's really just the uniforms and the colors that are making a distinction between them.
So going back to Emma Goldman's speech, for those who aren't familiar with it, can you explain it a little bit?
She was an anarchist, and it was really about how patriotism, like I said, can be used as propaganda to get people to do your work for you. And I just took very short part of the speech, excerpts from the speech, because it really went into great detail in numbers and what countries were spending in war. She initially wrote it, I think, in 2008, but it was published in 1908.
Yeah.
And then it was published in 1917. So she had a lot of statistics about the First World War and the price of war and what it cost to individuals. And she was, like I said, an anarchist and activist for workers' rights. So it was speaking for the soldiers as workers doing this work for power and money that it was not for their gain.
Yeah, interesting. So you said you're using different languages to recite the poem in your exhibit. Yes. What languages are you using and why?
Well, I wanted to have, and I could even do more, I wanted to get a cross-section of people. There's soldiers in every country. So there's Korean, Wolof, German, Hindi, Swedish, Spanish, French, there's Arabic. I don't know which, there's about 17 different languages.
Wow. So why did you choose those particular languages?
I didn't, it was kind of an open call, really.
Really?
Whoever volunteered to do it.
So what's the response been like to the exhibit?
It's been very positive. Actually, people have been talking about those whole issues, and it's interesting because it's mainly 3D animation. I also have 3D prints as a chessboard. So it's kind of like a fun and war games. And so there is this, and they're high-key colors, so this kind of game look to it. But people did get into the issues. Kids love it. They just,
I can imagine.
It's like eye candy for them. I don't know if they're little kids especially, so I don't know if they're getting into the whole aspect about what's being talked about in the speech. But it was a very good response. I mean, I got a lot of really interesting comments and conversations that hopefully will go on with it.
What do you want people to take away from it?
I guess, and another reason I think why I went back to this, because I left it for a couple of years, is just that it was written so long ago, but it's no different today. You know, it's no different, the 1%. It's the same idea, you know, the disparity between who's working for who and who's gaining from it. So it's the fact that, I don't know, I mean, I guess these kind of things go in cycles, or is it always there, more so than other, but what's going on now, even though it was the same thing that was going on over 100 years ago.
Tricia, what's next for you as an artist?
I know people ask me that because I've been working with these apes since 2011.
These apes.
I have so many ape files on my computer. And I've painted them. I've done, because I wanted to do military portraits, so I also wanted to get them out of the computer into physical space. But there might just be one more 3D world game.
Thank you so much, Trina McLaughlin, for being on the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
The multimedia exhibit runs until January 24th at the Medianoche Gallery in Harlem. When we come back, how a Brooklyn designer went from being an assistant to having Beyoncé wear his clothing. Finally from us, many independent fashion designers find that creating a successful brand can be an uphill battle. For Brooklyn-based designer Ruben Ruel, setting up shop online proved to be the winning formula. Abi Ishola spoke to him about his women's wear line and how social media and the internet catapulted him to success.
Ruben Ruel is working his dream job right from the comfort of his Brooklyn basement apartment. In 2010, the 29-year-old designer left his hometown in Virginia and moved to New York City with just his car, clothes, sewing machines, and a desire to make it in the fashion industry.
I was hungry. I was like, I have to stay in New York. There's nothing that's going to stop me.
There were a few bumps along the way. 2 years ago, after being fired from his job, he took his unemployment money and bought some wax-printed material, mostly used in African fashion. The trends of the 1970s and 80s, as well as many of the women in his life, inspired him to create a line called Domestics New York. Then he launched an online boutique on Etsy.com.
I knew that at that moment, that was a time where I needed to just do my own thing. And I just had a lot of faith, and I trusted and believed in God that I was going to be able to be successful.
He's been very successful. Ruel has seen his sales double since last year. According to his Etsy page, he has a total of over 2,000 individual sales of his merchandise. His customers are based all over the world, from the United States to places like Cyprus. He's also become a favorite among fashion bloggers and style mavens. One of his career highlights so far was when he saw Beyoncé wearing his designs.
What has the Beyoncé effect done for your line in terms of business and sales?
It has put me on the map as one of Beyoncé's favorite designers. But for the most part, customers who have already been my customers prior to, it just enhanced my notoriety in the fashion world.
In addition to his exposure on social media, Ruel credits having a web-based store on an interactive platform like Etsy as the secret to his success. He says such sites are the future of fashion rather than the pomp of events like Fashion Week.
Fashion Week, it's an amazing time for people in the fashion industry and for buyers. But for me, because I sell directly to my customer base, it's not necessarily something that's lucrative for my business. And also, I really feel that it will be something that will fade after a while. We have to think about the future of fashion. With social media, we see everything very fast, even more so than like style.com.
Through all his accomplishments, Ruel remains focused on his more immediate goals. Though he's known for using bold wax prints, he plans to incorporate solid colored garments come next year. He's also considering selling his designs wholesale, but on a limited scale.
I don't want this clothing line to get so far out where it gets washed out. I want it to be tangible to myself. And also, I like the fact that customers are able to contact me directly. It's like you're speaking to the designer himself.
You're quite the humble designer. You don't like the bells and whistles.
No. I really love my customers. They are the ones who I think about when I'm designing. They're the ones I think about when I'm selling. And also how I present myself in the clothing line.
Abi Ishola, Independent Sources.
That's our show this week. Thanks for staying tuned. Till next time, be independent-minded.